Virginia Nicholls heads up the NZABC's executive director of the NZABC. Looks at drinking and our consumption, and the latest survey, annual New Zealand Health Survey, out shows there's a real cultural shift in the way that we Kiwis are drinking, and especially amongst younger New Zealanders, hazardous drinking is down over 13% in the past 5 years, which is great news. It means that young people are doing something else, but also there's a reduction in hazardous drinking or harmful alcohol consumption among adults as well, which has been really impressive. And what's the reason for this? Why are we drinking less, and why are we drinking less hazardously? Which is good news. Virginia, g'day. Nice to have you on the program.
Yeah, hi. How are you, Duncan? Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. This is I have tracked this a bit with you in the past year or so. This is really good news because it wasn't like this in my day. It's sort of the numbers went up and it's coming the other way down. What's happening?
So the research, there's quite a lot of research on this as to what's actually happening and what's actually changing. It's a phenomenon that's not just happening in New Zealand, but it's happening internationally as well. As a society, we're drinking really differently. And a lot of it's about family influence, role models in our community. And we've also got an increasing percentage, if you like, of secondary school students who are choosing not to drink as well. And I think that's actually coming through, of course, to the sort of 18 to 24s that we're seeing in this particular survey. But I think that's taking it through to a nice cultural change there as well. And I think the other thing that's happening is it's okay not to drink. It's socially acceptable. And that's a big change that's happened over the last sort of 20 odd years.
That's a significant change because, and I'll go back to the 80s, and, if you didn't drink, you were somehow a wuss, or, what's wrong with you, mate? And, that was across the board, and even your parents might say that to you. And so our school certainly didn't get in the way of our drinking. They, after rugby games, it was encouraged, and we had all sorts of antics and parties, and, it never ended that well, to be honest. And I think now that kids are a lot more professional in their approach to their sport in their schools, and the schools are not going to have a bar of it, and so there are rules. And I think the kids are slightly straighter and more conservative in many ways than we were in our times,
And I think that's come through a whole of society sort of change, if you like, over sort of a good 20 odd years. It's interesting, we've got Dr. Jude Ball's research from the University of Otago. This occurred last year, and she looked at youth drinking and obviously found that it had declined significantly, and she wanted to understand why. She had qualitative data or data from focus groups from 20 years before, from that sort of pretty high time of 1999 to 2001, which was, there was a fair bit of drinking went on there, and she compared it to 2022. And she found there was this huge improvement in the way that students were drinking. The proportion of secondary school students, she did at 13 to 18, who reported ever drinking alcohol decreased from 82% in 2001 to 55%, so a huge change. And she also found that alcohol use was starting later. It was delayed update, which occurred in New Zealand as well as in the US, Australia and Sweden. She said there was an increasing awareness with these students of the health risks of drinking, which health is positioned as a personal responsibility and a moral imperative, which is good stuff. And she said the increasing sort of normalisation, if you like, of not drinking, which we just talked about. And she said there was no obvious policy trigger because it's been some time since we had any legislative change, which is back around about 2010. But she said the qualitative evidence suggested that it was changing parents, the parental attitudes, practices, and reduced face-to-face time with friends may play a role in the youth drinking decline. But the other thing that's very interesting in all of this is that in 2001, more than half of those in secondary school by year 10 were actually regularly drinking and going to parties. Today, only 2% are doing the same. And what she found, of course, was that there's been a change in attitude. It's quite complicated, as we can see, but it included social media. And it said that the sort of young people, if you like, today are actually spending more time online and replacing the drinking and partying of teens from 20 years ago. And there's a stronger awareness of alcohol-related health risks. And so they're staying at home, they're, if you like, interacting with their peers via social media. And so there's a bit of a balance always here, isn't there, of it's still important to go and meet up with your friends and have a chat, but we actually don't want them to do an awful lot of drinking doing that.
No, and I see this with my own boy who's 14 and his mates 14, 15, and none of them are interested in booze. And we don't even talk about it. It hasn't even, now when I was 14, 15, we're starting to emerge into that sort of thing. And then so the discussion hasn't even been had. There's no interest at all. These guys, they spend 7 hours a day on their phones. Now, I don't know, this is causing all sorts of other issues as well, but it's not booze. So we never had the phones. We never had the internet. We never had any of that time-consuming stuff, because once you can get lost down, the narrow corridors of these phones easily for hours. Now, we didn't have that. We had to go looking for trouble, if you like, and we found our mates, we found booze. Booze was cheaper then too. Remember, we could go to town for $20 and there was dollar beers. And all that stuff was pushed out by legislation in the last 20 years. You couldn't have that low-priced alcohol because it just helped with consumption, didn't it? And we all got boozed. That's all gone now, you see.
But I think the other thing that's happened as well, Duncan, is there's some really good education now too for 12 and 13-year-olds in high schools. And I think this has been since about 2019. And I think that's an important part of change, recent change, I guess, but still important. And that's run by the Life Education Trust, which goes out to a third of New Zealand secondary schools, funded by Tomorrow Project, which is a social change charity. It's governed by Spirits NZ, New Zealand Wine Growers and the Brewers. And since 2019, they've seen round about 88,000 students across New Zealand. And what they're finding is I've been in and watched this program. It's superb. It's an interactive one where they interact with the students. I've talked to the students and I've talked to the teachers. They all like it because they're learning things like the students are learning how to say no to alcohol, or not drinking at all. What's a standard drink? What on earth does that mean? What's safe drinking? What's binge drinking about, and peer pressure, and also the availability as well of low and no alcohol products too, which is a real significant change of good quality products probably in the last sort of 5-6 years. And so again, the independent research from this is showing real positive feedback from the schools, so both the teachers and the students, which is exciting stuff, really.